Hey, how's it going? Brian Bowman here, and I hope you're having a great day, a great week. And I've got a question for you. So, if you look at some part of your life, and whether it be in your business, in your marriage, or your relationships, or even a skill that you want to acquire, when you look at that part of your life and this thing that you want to achieve, this thing you want to have, not necessarily a material thing, it can be a skill. And if you identify somebody in your life or somebody you know of that has accomplished that skill or has achieved that, whatever that success is for you that you've defined, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you see that person? For a lot of people, and for me included, that first thing was, wow, must be nice, right? Must be nice to have that. Or maybe even for some, it's, well, I could never do that because I don't have X, Y, Z. I don't have some skill that they have. Must be nice to have had those privileges to allow you to have this thing. And even for some people, when we have a positive thing where we say, oh, wow, good for you, there's almost an underhanded kind of jealousy, right? Of like, good for you, but man, like, yeah, you lucky, whatever, right? And I'd have you consider a question or a response that for me, when I started doing this, and I'd have you consider doing this yourself and developing a habit of doing this, it changed everything for me. It really was a game-changing insight for me in business, in relationships, in my own life, in developing skills. And the question that I started asking myself is, who do I have to become to do that? Who do I have to become to have that? When I shifted that dialogue in my head, it changed everything. It changed my success in business. It changed the quality of my relationships, because it suddenly framed the question, not in terms of, wow, I could never have that, because it's, I can have that, but what is it going to take? And, I look at my life. So the last 8 years have been, we've been very blessed in business. We've done very well and we've had a lot of success, but the side that maybe, and maybe this is on me, I don't talk about enough. And maybe because it's not related to marketing for e-commerce or to business, is it's been a huge struggle for us. We've had a lot of personal struggles in our personal life with family. The last 8 years have been very, very, very difficult. And when people hear more about our story and what we've been through, in fact, I shared a big part of that journey, not all of it. There's actually a lot of pieces I didn't share. But at Funnel Hacking Live in 2018 in Orlando, I shared part of our story. And a lot of people, when they hear the details of the story, they go, wow, I could never, like that happens a lot. Like I could never go through that. I could never do that. And there's something I learned. It was a book I read a while ago. It's from a friend recommended. It's called Willpower Doesn't Work. And the whole idea was that environment is what causes us to rise to greatness. And actually, I have the book right here, and I want to read something to you because it's really amazing. So it starts by saying, historian Will Durant spent over 4 decades studying the history of the world and recording his findings in the 11-volume masterpiece, The Story of Civilization. And the book, by the way, is Willpower Doesn't Work by Ben Hardy. And he says, Will Durant says, he covered, well, the entire scope of human history. He looked at the great and defining moments, and more importantly, he studied the greatest and most impactful people the world has ever known. And after those thousands of hours of study and careful reading, he concluded, somewhat surprisingly, that history isn't shaped by those giants. It isn't some clay that someone comes along and leaves their imprint on. No, in fact, what Durant concluded was that history was not shaped by great men or women, but rather by demanding situations. So if we look at this question about who do we have to become, because there is definitely a sequence. If you want to have something, when you ask the question, who do I have to become to have that, who do I have to become to have that experience? And we know that growth mindset is a real thing. Very few things in our life are fixed. If you've ever read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset, it's another sort of game-changing book that you realize that the people who accomplish the most, they have a bias in their mind that tells them everything is malleable. Everything can be changed. If you want to have an amazing business and you maybe don't have the right ingredients to start with, you don't have the capital, the relationships, the knowledge, whatever it might be, the talent, quote unquote, you can develop those things. Very few things are fixed. Most things can be changed and you can grow. So when we look at that, if like you want to become someone that can act a certain way to take the actions to have the thing that you want. So when you start with this question of who do I have to become, we now start asking the right question. We start the wheels of change. And one more point that Will Durant makes, and he was quoted in an interview, and I just love this. I love this because it I don't know about you, but it gets me like, just reminds me that we can create what we want, but it's not a matter of just thinking about it. There's going to be action, and more than action, it's not just going to be what we do as individuals. It's going to be what our environment forces us to do. So check this out. Durant says the hero is a product of a situation rather than the result being a product of the hero. So rather than the hero creating this thing, it's actually the situation that brings forth the hero. It is demand that brings out the exceptional qualities of man or women. Heroes form the function of meeting a situation which demands all their potential abilities. I think the ability of the average man could be doubled if it were demanded, if the situation demanded it. So it goes back to this idea of a growth mindset. And if we want to become something else, our environment is going to be such a huge ingredient in a huge part of us rising to the occasion to become the hero of our story. We want to have this other life. We want to have this other skill. We want to have this relationship. We want to have this business. We're going to have to become someone else. So by first asking, who do we have to become? Now, who do I have to become to have that? Then we create a forcing function in our life, an environment that forces it. And this goes back to what I was sharing. People hear about our story and the struggles, and, in the middle of all this difficulty, I lose both of my parents at a time in my life that I felt like the walls were already crumbling, and I lose my parents. And it's like, how am I ever going to make it through this? It was an environment that forced me to rise to greatness. I've uncovered a tremendous power on the other side of really deep pain, but I would have never had that power. I would have never been able to open up that bigger vessel to receive more had I not had to go through that chasm, through that pain. The environment forced me to essentially become the hero of my story. So you hear about this all the time where people go through really, really difficult times, and we look at it, we're like, I could never. Well, first of all, you're human, which means you are the most adaptive creature on the planet. I mean, that is what makes us, if you look at us compared to all the other animals, we're really slow. We're not very strong. We're like, there's not a lot of things that we're really good at, but man, can we adapt? And obviously we're extremely intelligent, but we can adapt better than almost anything in the world. That's our superpower. So by creating environments, forcing functions that force us to rise up and uncover that greatness, that's the fastest way to do it. It's not about this willpower of like, all right, I'm gonna try really hard, right? Think about if you've ever started a business and your back's against the wall. I think back to when I first started eCommerce seriously. I had been flipping things, literally like everything, books. We actually had a really good side income just flipping books and furniture. We paid for cool vacations and put some money away and stuff. But when I was a consultant, I was like, you know what? I got to get out of this. Like, I have to do this full time. I have to leave my job. I cannot work in a cubicle. I don't care how much they pay me. I need to be free. It was like my back was against the wall. Like, there was no turning back. So I would work all day. I'd come home. I'd work my tail off at night. I had this makeshift desk, and I would be up in the middle of the night with manufacturers and all this other stuff. And it forced me. It was a forcing function. It forced me to succeed. But if you've ever done that, and then all of a sudden you start getting some success, you start getting some money, you leave the job, the business is doing well, you can get really comfortable. And it's really interesting that the thing that got you from $0 to $10,000 is not the same thing that gets you from 10 to 100, from 100 to a million, from a million to 3 and beyond. There's a transformation that has to happen at each one of those stages. And if you've only ever made $10,000 in a business, it's hard to comprehend that, like, it's different to make 100 grand. And if you made 100 grand, let's say, you have $100,000 salary, let's say, you're like, oh, well, you just keep doing the same thing and you'll make $1 million. It just does not work that way because the environment changes. So you have to create these forcing functions, these things that force you to grow. So what's the point? The point is that willpower is great, positive mindset, and I'm going to do it. And you wake up pumped up, and that's great. You go to a 3-day event, you get all jacked up. You're going to grow your business. That's amazing. but it never lasts because the environment that you are in every single day doesn't force you to rise to greatness, right? It's not that it doesn't force you into that situation where I have to step up to make this happen. I have to become someone who's going to act in the way who's going to take the actions that are going to produce what I actually want to have. So how do we create an environment that forces greatness? I want to talk about this a little bit. These are very, very tactical things you can do. And literally, I do these. I remind myself of these things all the time. Number one, elimination. Elimination diet is one of the fastest ways to create an environment that's conducive to producing the things that you want, to becoming who you have to be to rise to greatness so you can actually achieve the things you want to achieve. So by elimination, I mean, I'm always amazed when people know that the average CEO reads a book a week. I actually create an environment where I read about 2 books a week. So I'm reading like 100 books a year. People are like, they know that they should read at least 20 books a year, right? Even a book a month would be 12 books a year. And you ask them, how many books do you read? The average person reads 1 book a year, maybe. And you ask them, what do they say? I don't have any time. Okay. Well, then I ask, how much time are you spending watching TV? How much time are you spending on your cell phone? How much time are you spending on addictions, like opening a new tab, like going through email, like spending an hour on Facebook, like watching YouTube video? And by the way, I'm not judging. I do all these things. I have an addiction to these things too. These things were created to force an addiction, right? We get a dopamine hit when we get that reward. Instead of using willpower to try to be like, all right, I'm not gonna use my phone, or I'm not gonna spend an hour going down some YouTube rabbit hole. Eliminate it. If you need to do your work where there's not a computer, do that. Put your phone. I flip it into airplane mode. It's in a drawer right now. It's in a drawer. Like, I don't even look at it. TV, it's like TV is just, we know how much of a time suck TV is. Just if you need to, get rid of it or unplug it. Even just unplugging it, the fact that you have to plug it in, it forces you to have to take action. So you're most likely not going to do it. And look in your life, whatever it is. If you think about dieting, the reason dieting doesn't work a lot of times is because we don't create a forcing function in our life to keep the junk food out, right? Or to force us to work out. One of the things I'm going to talk about is making a huge investment. Why do I invest in masterminds? Like very, very expensive masterminds? Because people who pay attention. When I pay attention. So when I invest in that, now it's like I'm committed. I remember when I wrote my first check for like the first big mastermind I joined, it was $25,000. It was 25 grand that I was like, I don't think I have 25 grand to spare for this. Like, this is insane. But I knew it was going to force me. It was a forcing function, forcing me to become something else. And I'm always looking for those opportunities to create that forcing function. So a huge investment for me, I had a $97 a month membership to a gym, like one of the more popular gyms, real fancy, the swimming pool, the track inside, the lounge, all this other stuff. I never freaking went. I spent 8 times as much and just hired a trainer to train me. And I'm actually like working out. I'm actually getting in shape. So I 8x'd my investment. I made a huge investment. I forced myself to have to show up because it hurts when I don't show up to the gym and I still get dinged, the $100 for the session or whatever, or the grand a month, right? It's like making an investment. It's like people are like, well, I could do it for so much cheaper. Yeah, but I won't do it. That's the problem. So huge investments and then forcing yourself, forcing your environment through elimination. You want to go on a diet? Throw all the junk food out. But I paid $2.99 for those chips. Who cares? It's costing you way more than $2.99 to have those freaking chips in the house. Throw those things away. Just throw out the junk food and only buy the food that you want to eat. I guarantee you, willpower won't even be a question for you. And I'm saying from my own experience, this has been my experience. It's made dieting a lot easier when I just throw everything out and put in what I need. Again, huge investment, whatever it is. If it's a mastermind, if it's training programs, I still spend a lot of money investing in myself. Warren Buffett says the best thing you can invest in is in yourself because they can't tax it. They can't come after it. Once you have it, it's yours. And it's the thing that's going to give you the highest return. So huge investments for me are a big part of my strategy to create a certain environment. Competitive spirit, wake up your competitive spirit. It's okay to be competitive. In fact, the people who are your role models now in business, in whatever it is you want to achieve. But let's say in business, instead of just looking up to them and learning from them, which you should, actually go ahead and see them as your competitors. And not in like a bad competitive way, but in a way where you start looking at what they're doing and observing it and applying it, and then trying to actually do more or do better than they are. There's a book, Relentless, which I recommend you check out. It's amazing. It goes into the sports psychology of people like Michael Jordan, like Kobe Bryant. Like, have you ever wondered how is it that people who are at the top of their game continue to improve? Like, you talk about not having your back against the wall. If you're one of the best in the world, if not the best ever, like, how do you wake up hungry to do more? Like, there's no one to beat. So that book is amazing for helping understand like that competitive spirit, and waking that up in us in business is a huge asset. And then the final thing is ritual and routine. People don't want to be told what to do, right? We hate structure. But one of the great sort of ironies or paradoxes in life is that structure breeds freedom. The more structure we have, this is I believe the Stoics that believed this, and like Seneca talked about this. The more structure we have, the more free we become. And as I've gotten older, I am more and more, I love rituals. You know, I make some coffee in the morning, just a little bit. I try to not take too many stimulants. But I take coffee in the morning a little bit, and I love using a French press. Sure, it's way longer than doing drip coffee. Sure, it takes way more time than, you know, some other ways you can make coffee, but I love the ritual of it. I just love it. It gets me in a certain mindset, and it starts my day. Every day I start with meditation. I meditate 20 minutes first thing in the morning. It's a ritual. Yes, there's benefits. You know, there's lots of research done about meditation, but it's a ritual that gets me in a state to be in like peak performance. You might have a ritual for what you do before you go to the gym. I remember when I was training jujitsu really heavily, I would wash my gi, you know, that's like what you wear. I would fold it up and I would have it sitting on the counter. And that was part of my ritual. When I would go to the gym, there was a ritual. Even warm-ups and everything, it's a ritual. So when you can create routine and ritual, it gets you into a momentum, into a place where you can then have peak performance. And these are all things that take positive mindset out, and you need positive mindset. I'm not saying you don't, but that alone is not sufficient to get the results that you want. You have to become someone else to take the actions that will result in the things that you want. And one of the fastest ways is through your environment. So try some of those things. And remember, you literally can be and have almost anything that you want, because nothing is fixed. Very few things, I should say, are fixed. Sure, if you want to be a professional basketball player and you're 5'2", might have some challenges, but you know, whatever. Muggsy Bogues, he was like 5'3". It can happen, but for most things in our life, the things that we want to achieve, a growth mindset will get us there. We just have to remember that very few things are fixed. So take that, run with it, eliminate the things that are distracting you, getting in your way, create an environment that forces you to become more, and watch things take off. So have an amazing rest of your day. I appreciate you, and talk soon. Bye.